Right. Hello, everyone. My students 577. Today we have a new session on literature review, which is the second part after you are finding your problem and your questions. I got a great opportunity to read everyone's problems and questions, and I attempted to give each one of you feedback on their problem, the nature of the problem, and the choices of questions and how to format it. My job, or our job as researchers, is to teach you how to come up with the question yourself by our guidance. So that's what I'm trying to do, is to get you to figure it out through guidance and through step by step. Most of you did very well in formatting their problem, the research problem, and coming up with the proper questions that match with this problem. And if you found difficulty in formatting your question, I want you to go back to the chapter and read again. And I gave you some guidelines on how your question should look like. But the most important thing that I would like to share with you is the concept of just finding the problem and writing the questions. That's the most important phase, where you get to start with all of your ideas and initiate in your research. And if you don't have what I call a strong story, you're not going to be able to go through all the tumbling phases that you're going to face. You're going to have a lot of bumps along the road, and unless the researcher has a strong passion and a strong story that builds up all the way until you find your results, you're going to be lost somewhere in the process. So what I want you to make sure is to first have a story, a strong story that you believe in, and either you went through, saw, or someone told you about, or read about it. And then the second thing is have the passion for this story. For example, let me give you a story about my research that I did for the dissertation, because this is, I picked this specific example because this is the time when you are most vulnerable, right? You're writing a research and you're trying to figure out things, and you're really not sure where you are or what you're doing. And that's exactly how I felt when I started the journey for my PhD, when I had to, or I was asked, what is it that you want to research? And I really came to the PhD program with a story in the background that I had passion for. And the story is, let me tell you the story. The story is basically, as an ESOL teacher, I was an ESOL teacher for 8 years at Prince William County Schools before I did my PhD in 2008. And I had a student who came from Iran. She was a third grader, and she was veiled at third grade, which is age 8. And the classroom teacher, I wasn't the direct ESOL teacher for this student, but I was helping out with third grade, but my main grade level was 5th grade. But anyways, because I have the Middle Eastern background, the classroom teacher came and talked with me about this child who she was concerned about. This classroom teacher was a fantastic teacher. She used all of the interactive and active learning in her classroom. She used cooperative learning, singing songs, using manipulatives, group work, all of the above. I mean, she was a good teacher, most up to date, and she believed in multiple intelligences and active learning. So she was telling me that no matter what she did with this ESOL student who had an Iranian background, or she had just came actually from Iran, she would not participate. She says, we do a lot of singing and we do a lot of rhyming, and she still wouldn't participate. I put her in groups, in interactive groups. Students are talking together and interacting together, and she still wouldn't work with her peers. We would do some kinesthetic, active movement in the classroom and assign physical responses with specific vocabulary or language, and she still wouldn't participate. And she was wondering what was going on, and she said maybe she is having difficulty with learning in general, and she wanted me to speak with a child or with the parents. I don't speak Persian, I speak Arabic, but I had the same background since it's a close cultural Middle Eastern background, and I'm Muslim too, so, and the girl is veiled, so obviously we have that background in common. So I think that's why the teacher wanted me to speak with the child or with the parents. So I tried to speak with the kid. She wasn't really comfortable, and she didn't know how to express herself since she didn't have the basic conversational English language. So I spoke with the father, who was always in the picture for anything and everything, and he felt comfortable to tell me more about their background. And they come from a very fundamentalist background where music is considered taboo. Body movement and physical movement is not a good thing for girls, and he didn't even want her to participate in PE. He also talked about cooperative grouping and how it's a big no thing for him as a Muslim man to let his girl speak and play with boys in the same group. So this interaction is considered a taboo, or something forbidden from their religion as well. So it was basically everything that the teacher tried to do as something good, as interactive, multiple intelligence, active working, all of that, these good things, which she thought is best for her ESOL student, actually did not work at all with the background of this child. She could not participate in cooperative groups, she could not do kinesthetic and singing, and she could not basically sing any song, because songs are also, or anything with rhythm is also considered haram or taboo. So from that, the father was telling me that this is what the child is going through, and this is the difficulty that this child is going through. I started to realize that we are taking multiple intelligences and active learning process of teaching for granted. We assume that these are the best ways of teaching, but we never considered this chunk with culture and religion, and how contextualizing this process of teaching and learning and approaches to teaching, contextualizing it makes a difference based on culture and background. So that's when I started to think, are multiple intelligences applicable for any culture or any religion? That was my first thinking of my story. That's how I built up my story. So I had a situation I had a question mark on that situation. And then I started to frame the questions for my situation. Now, that first question that I just said was just the very initial question, and that wasn't the format that the final question came about. What happened is that I continued to research, do pilot studies on that basic first initial question. Are multiple intelligences applicable for ESOL students, elementary ESOL students from any culture or background or religious background? I did pilot studies here in the U.S., in schools here in the U.S., and I started to collect data together with the literature review that I had. And then I came about to realize that I really want to know teachers' perspective. So I specified in my question to show what kind of direction I'm going with my research. So I wanted to research teachers' perspective rather than a comparative study on a class with different cultures and a class with a monoculture and using multiple intelligences and what happens here. No, what I wanted to do, or came about to realize, that I just want to talk with ESOL or EFL, English for Foreign Language, teachers, and want to know their perspective on using multiple intelligences in the classroom, in their ESOL classroom, and whether they really needed to do any tweaking or changing or modifications for the multiple intelligence approach for teaching when they come to students with different cultural and diverse background. And that's how I started, and then I went all the way to see EFL teachers' perspective in Egypt and wanted to study how they're using multiple intelligences and active learning in their cultural setting, which is a cross-cultural perspective coming from approaches and methodologies that are used heavily in the West, and now they're generalized to many parts in the world. One of them is Egypt. So how do they view multiple intelligences in their cultural context, in their Middle Eastern cultural context, and whether they think the approach to teaching is applicable or not? Can they do it? Can they apply it in their classroom? Why not? What happens? Can culture be a factor? Do we need acculturation in the context? So what I want to say to you is that stories is the base, and then they develop. Your questions should develop, and your final question should come to that when you are specific to the point where, what are you doing in order to venture this? Who are you talking to? And who are you researching, and how are you researching it? And so this is, and you can have one question with subcategories, or you can have categories of this one problem. I had 3 questions or 3 different categories for my main problem. So this is what I wanted you to understand, the idea of the developing story into a problem, and that developing problem into an initial question, and then developing initial question into more layered, enhanced questions. This can happen through different research of literature until you come to the appropriate idea, and then you reform or develop your questions, or through pilot studies where you always structure and restructure until you come to your final component or your final part where you are sure now that this is what I want to study and this is the question that I want to question. Alright, so you are in that phase. You're doing well. I liked your stories, and I think you are ready to pick the question that you like the most now. And I want you to frame it in today or tomorrow. frame your final question or questions of this one problem or one statement of a problem or one story. And then you'll start to venture into your literature review. Without having the statement of the problem and the questions, you will probably find some difficulty reviewing literature because you are not having enough keywords or statements that you want to research. The first thing that you want to do when you're researching your literature is to have or know what you are researching. So I'm hoping that all of you are already in that phase of knowing your statement of the problem and knowing what you want to research. This is how, oh, sorry. Okay, I meant the Word document. Okay, so here you are in that phase. So you usually when you're writing a research, you have an introduction where you're setting the story, you're setting the mode for your story, and then you state your problem. Coming from that story, what is the problem that you really want to research? What are the demographics? What is your plan to research it, and how is it or why is it important? Then you start stating your questions, specifically what you're going to do and who are you studying. Some researchers might have hypotheses based on the research. If you're qualitative, then you're not going to have hypothesis, but if you're quantitative, then you have to have hypotheses for each question. Then you come to the literature review. That's your fourth step in a research proposal writing. That's where we are right now. I hope that you're ready and you're done with these two in order to get to this one. Now, literature review is how you frame everything here. You are looking for specific keywords and concepts that you want to study from this statement of the problem. Once you start to read things, you'll come to narrow down your ideas and thinking and concepts to put it in a specific. For example, I was generalized and overwhelmed with the idea of active learning and multiple intelligences, and I keep going back and forth when I was doing my dissertation research until I realized that I want to frame my research really in the multiple intelligence framework rather than active learning, because I found that active learning is too broad and there are plenty of strategies and activities under an active learning, but multiple intelligence is actually part of or a way or an approach of having an active instruction in the classroom, but rather very specific in the tools that you use in order to target the intelligences. So in the literature review, I started to frame my study to look at the application or the implementation of multiple intelligences in teaching a lesson in an ESOL classroom or an EFL classroom. So that was the framework, and I kept narrowing it down to even the age of development of multiple intelligences to the 1990, I can't remember, 97 or something. And that was the last version of the multiple intelligences. So in the literature review, you're framing your work, you're focusing, and you're narrowing down your search to put the problem in a frame of literature, basically. Now, how do you do this? Let's go and venture around. How do you do this? Now, you can research literature by just going to Google or Yahoo and type in some keywords. But the problem is, there are two problems actually for this type of search, Googling or Yahoo. The first problem is that it will give you a magnitude amount of results, that it will be very overwhelming, and it will not help you to narrow down your search, but rather broadening and opening things that might not be of a great relation. It will just overwhelm you with too many ideas, too many thoughts, and probably the link is not there. But as a person who's initially doing for the first time a research, the number of research will be too overwhelming for you. The second problem is that it might not be trustworthy. The resources that you are provided in a Google or Yahoo is not filtered enough or narrowed down enough based on the quality of research. Basically, the network of that Google and Yahoo search engine is connected to many keywords that and many links that just if one of the search engines pick up one of the words that you had in the search engine, you automatically receive this as a result, and it might not be a trustworthy result. So there are two downfalls for basically using Google and Yahoo. Now, the alternative is either go to a public library or government library or whatever and research there, and maybe a librarian can help you with your research, or you can use your online library at your convenience. And since you're a Hood student, you should have this convenient for you. If you go to the Hood page and write and click on library, or go to www.hood.edu/library, you get to the main library page. Now, how can you search for articles in the Hood library? You can always go to the advanced search. That's your best hit, and then maybe right here that you want education. That's the field that you want to focus on, and I think that's the best way to do it, is to just focus on, you're in education, you want all of your stuff to be in that page, rather than just looking at all genre. So we went to, let's go back and show you that. You went to the first page of the library, and you went to advanced search, and you chose education, and you hit go. It brings you to this page. Now, look at this page. The best ones that you can use here, the best links, sorry, that you can use to best direct you to the articles in the field, and it really gives you a good search engine that helps you to find your content, is Academic Search Complete. That's your best bet. The benefit of the Academic Search Complete is that it's broad. You just type in the keywords that you want, and you can narrow it down based on specific categories that I'm going to show to you in a minute, and it will direct you to the articles. In education journals, it's good if you know a specific periodical journal that you want to research and find. You can go there and type in the name of the journal, and then they will give you the publication volumes of each, the publication titles of each volume. You go to the volume, you go to the year, and then you choose the article that you want from the titles that you have. EDUC website is I'm skipping this because it's a little bit limited. So if you want to search EDUC, you want to go to EDUC website. Here it's kind of linked still to Hood University, so you might have some articles and you might not be able to get some others. Academic video online is great, but it's videos, so if you needed to search for specific videos, you can. If your topic is a little bit vague for you and you want to see stories or create a story for yourself, if you don't have the privilege of being a teacher right now, having or going through a specific story or problem right now, and you want to create a story for yourself, you can search the topic that interests you abstractly, and then the videos from specific situational exposure to a classroom or something will give you an idea of the essence of this problem, and then maybe create a story for you. Ebook, if you want to, ebook collection is another very good resource. Rather than having just articles, you can find books to read and get abstracts from it. That's basically master's and thesis, and there's a dissertation as well link if you want to go to the database of previous students' master theses that were accepted by Hood Library to be published in the Hood Library, and so on. So let's go to Academic Search Complete. This is something that I used to use, or I do use all the time. You get to write the keyword, select the keyword that you want to search. So for example, I can say active learning strategies. Okay, I can just collect a field, or I can just leave it open and I can just go ahead and search, or I can narrow it down, narrow the search down a little bit and say active learning strategies and culture difference, and then hit search, or even narrow down and say and something else, or narrow down in the search options categories right here, which I highly recommend for you. If you want to have as is and just have a broad search for it, then that's fine. But if you want to have specifics, then let's look up here, down here, sorry. We can see that these are the search modes that you have. You want to find all of your search items, so we're good here. You want full texts. You don't want abstracts only. You want to read the article, so you want full text. And then you don't want a too old article published too late. So you can say year of, from month, it doesn't matter, and then year would be probably 2014, and then to 2017. That's your limit. That's how up to date you want it. And then you want it in English, and you want it to be a scholarly peer-reviewed journal where this is the most authentic and most trustworthy way of finding a research. If a research is peer-reviewed, that shows that this research is of a very high quality and followed all the scientific process appropriately and is measurable, and actually you can replicate from this research when you base another research on this research. So if you pick peer-reviewed, it means that you trust whatever article you're going to get from that. Image quick review, if you have specific image and then publication name of a specific publicist, or I would say you leave it open at this. Then you go ahead and search. And let's see what we're going to get. We got 2 articles, full PDFs, Fundamentals to Initiate a Patient Safety Management System in Integrated Chronic Health Care, which has nothing to do with what I wanted. Old Persons, Narrations on Falls and Falling, Stories of Courage and Endurance. Again, this is nothing that I really wanted, so maybe I'll take this out and see what happens. My category options are still here. So here I got more results. Effectiveness of modifying Jigsaw as an active learning strategy. Active learning strategies for legal topics or whatever. You can try to put here active learning strategies and diversity. That's an article that I can use right here. I can open it and look at the information here. The author, abstract. Reading the abstract always helps you to, instead of printing right away the PDF or the paper that I found and then reading it and then deciding that no, that's not the way, or that's not what I wanted to focus on. Reading the abstract before you look at the paper helps you to narrow down what this paper is really about, and then you can email it to yourself, or you can print it, or you can add it to your folder. If you want to get the citation for this article, it gives you the different citations. The APA is the format that we usually use in our education genre. So this is how an APA looks like, and you can just copy and paste it for your references in your reference list. You can continue doing this search and continue to find information from the database. Let's go here to Eric. Again, it's that you're searching Eric right now, but it looks like how you would use the academic search complete. So you do the same thing and you share and you search and you make sure that you're using you're narrowing down your categories and subcategories in order to get what you really want. Adult education, early childhood. It's very specific with Eric, much more specific with Eric than the academic search complete, and I highly recommend using it. Now, once you have, say for this purpose of this research, you have 4 or 5 articles that you really liked their abstracts. Now you decided to email it to yourself, or to save it to your folder, or to print it. Go ahead and start reading the article and make sure that you're writing notes to yourself along the line while you're reading to see how is this matching your framework. Usually what happens is you find yourself modifying a lot, either in your research problem or actually figuring out a frame that you want to stay in and eliminate something that you want to, or you feel that, you know what, it's not covered as much and it feels that it's going to be too overwhelming, or this article really negates what I wanted to research or put here in this research, so I'm just going to exclude it. And you keep framing your problem and your research questions once you saturate yourself with literature. For the sake of our semester in this course, you're not going to keep reading until you saturate yourself with literature. And what I mean by literature saturation is when you find yourself, that's it, I found all what I can find, or the best articles that I can find about what I want to research in this topic. So maybe we're not going to get to this point, but at least leave yourself a space for 4 to 5 literature articles, or maybe a couple of articles and one book. I don't know if you will have the time to read it, but go ahead, and if you do, and if you're interested and you're taking this towards maybe a thesis at the end, then yes, you want to invest some time in it. After you found your 5 articles and you read them, it is essential that you are organized in taking care of this literature, and that's what we call the systematic process. You started the process with taking from the statement of the problem your the concepts that you want to research. The ones that you wrote here are your limiting or broadening keywords. Okay, so that's the first step. Then you found your searched articles and you kept eliminating or adding based on these keywords that you have chosen. Now the third step after you found your stuff is to be organized. Have a Word document for yourself, or however you want to do it, but put the abstract of the article, the title of the article, categorize them. Maybe write you'll write article number 1, and then you write the title, and then you write the author's name and citation of this article, and then in here you're going to write the abstract for this article, and so on. You go to the next, to article number 2, the title, the author's name, citation, and then the abstract, until you have the 5 of them ready for you here to, when you start writing, you have your citation ready. You don't have to go back and look for them and try to find them, or try to find the keywords or the themes in that article. I can't remember what was this article about, because when you go back to your writing, back and forth with reading the literature, you'll find yourself overwhelmed with too many readings and too many articles and citations. So every time you finish an article, just do that. Do yourself a favor and have the title, the author, and the citation with an abstract, and then move to the second article, read it, finish it, digest it, and then write it down here, and so on, so that when you get to writing your paper, right here, the framework, you know what you are working on. Now, how are you going to write your literature review? You're not going to write it on an article by article or literature by literature, but rather thematic. You're discussing the themes that come under the framework of your problem. So, for example, one of the themes of the multiple intelligences, and after I read and blah blah blah, I talked about multiple intelligences in the regular classroom, and under this title I talked about the literature, the benefits of using multiple intelligences in a regular classroom, blah blah blah, and then another subtitle with multiple intelligences in the ESOL classroom, and I talked about the literature, and then maybe another subtitle, multiple intelligences going outside, from the west to the east, And then I talked about the different experiences of authors talking about using multiple intelligences in the classroom in the East or in the Middle East. And then another subtitle about the criticism of multiple intelligences. That's part of the literature that I wrote. I need to show that multiple intelligences can have good things that are beneficial, and what are the downfalls of that approach of teaching English. So categorize your literature or your frame as thematic rather than by article. This way you have a flow in your writing. Now, for the sake of this abstract that you're submitting, you will be writing between 1 page to 2 pages maximum. I don't want you to go over the top. Remember, this is a mini proposal. It's just a mock way of how to write a research. You're not experimenting and you're not doing the research, so we just want to know the different titles in the process of the scientific method of research, and what comes under each title, and how to venture about writing under each title. And how the next part, actually from the second module, we're going to start to find different methods of writing the methodology, which is that next step right here, that we're going to write the methodology, and it will differ from one to another. I think I covered everything that I wanted to tell you about the literature reading. Please read identifying the keywords, and then you identify the resource or the source that you're going to search, or the search engine that you're going to use. How to narrow down or broaden your search, like what we did right here, how to narrow it down or how to broaden it, and how to make sure that you have the proper search options that you need. Then you start to locate your articles that you really best want, and that's when what we did in the previous search. Here, locating the articles that you think are best for you by clicking on the title that you think is close to what you want, and then maybe reading the abstract to decide for a final decision, and then save it in a folder or print it or whatever to get ready to read it. After you read each article, you do the abstract and summaries in that format that I showed you right here. Title, author, citation, then write your summary or the abstract of the article. And then at the end, you start your literature review by analyzing these ideas that you got from the literature review thematically in a discussion, more of a discussion with a strong flow to support. Remember, your literature review is mainly written to support all of your arguments in the statement of the problem and your questions. So how do you frame and support your argument is the skill that you're going to gain when you write a literature review. Before writing the review, I can suggest that you read a couple of short literature reviews just to get an idea of how they wrote it. But if you really do it the way I just told you to do it, it will be simple and easy, and hopefully it will work out fine. I hope that you don't have any questions so far. I actually meant to post this video today rather than yesterday because I felt that some of you are still lagging in deciding on your research. questions. So I wanted to give you more time to do that together with reading the chapters, because I always really like that you watch the video after you're settled with your reading. It's like a second step, not the step that you rely on. So I wanted to give you that extra day to just make sure that you read it and you're settled down on what you want your research question to look like. And hopefully in the next couple of days until Monday midnight, you will figure out the question, submit it back to me if you want me to look at it under discussion board, or you can email it to me to give you a final thought or an okay. But most of you, or all of you actually, are in that step. Whatever you're going to write in the next edit, I think you're close to just go ahead and start. So go ahead and start with a couple of articles. 3, I'm saying for the sake of our project and our timing, from 3 to 5 articles are more than enough for the purpose of this research or this course right now. So 3 to 5 is you're good to go. And then your literature review could be from 1 page to 2 pages maximum. You can choose to do subtitles within that, under that title of literature review, or if you don't choose to do subtitles right now, at least tell me, and I will do my best to reply to you ASAP. And good luck in that next stage. And hopefully it will work out for all of you. Remember, this is just the very first step and the very first time that you read the literature, so it's okay that you struggle a bit with it, and you're graded on the effort of that process right now. So we're in the process. Your final paper is the final paper that you're going to have your final grade on the quality of your work. But right now we're submitting an effort of or through the process. All right, good luck everyone.